So that's a real story. I was about 12 or 13 at the time, and there is this couple I don't know that my dad, invited into the house, and they're sitting in the sitting room, and suddenly I turn up in the doorway, and my dad notices me, and the conversation stops. And he's sitting on one sofa, and opposite he's got this couple, so they're like facing each other. So I feel like I'm on stage, and then my dad introduces me, and he says these words: "This is my daughter. She's quite underweight." And then he starts chuckling in a very embarrassed way. And then he mumbles something to cover his embarrassment. I don't know what he actually said. He was mumbling something, but I remember I came to the kitchen. I came to the kitchen, and I just felt so much shame and rage. And I started to express it to my mom. And I remember my mom didn't say anything. She was like, I don't know what to say, probably. And this is, I think, one of the core experiences I had as a little girl, which was the foundation for what we can say low self-worth, which if we break it down into smaller bits, it's got very particular components. So it's not just this incident. There were several incidents. And by the way, whoever's listening, I have very loving parents, and like many people, I have very loving parents who gave us a lot of love and care. But this is, I think, the generation where the awareness of what it actually means to nurture a child, it was just not existent. And they didn't receive the love that, the child needs themselves. So I think what I learned around the age of 10, 11, I learned through those incidents who I am and what love is and what love is not. And I developed my level of expectation as well around what I can receive from a man in a romantic relationship, what I can receive as such from life as well, and around what I deserve. So what I learned, of course, it's all subconscious. What I learned was that I'm not good enough. I don't deserve to be loved, respected, and cherished exactly as I am, for who I am. Another thing, because as I mentioned, it was about my looks, right? You're underweight, like it was always like you're thin. If you looked actually at my pictures from childhood, I'm not underweight, I'm just on the slim side. And they were so fixated back then in Poland about a child being a certain, size to be healthy. There were those funny views. And I heard this message like, oh, you're underweight. So frequently as a child, and then as a teenager and as a young woman, that I developed this belief there's something intrinsically wrong with me. There's just something wrong with me. And there's something broken in me. So these were the foundations for me, right? Of the low self-esteem, what we can call low self-esteem and low self-worth. And of course, I did not realize any of that on a conscious level. But I always compare it to a hole, like they created this hole because, that nurturing was not there. And it's not to say, oh, let's blame our parents, this is never, ever a solution, because actually most parents love their kids, to the best of ability, unless, of course, if there's abuse. And very often emotional neglect happens unintentionally. So I was, receiving emotional neglect, and it wasn't an intentional emotional neglect. And this happens quite a lot. I think this happens quite a lot. So, it had a huge impact on me in my life, not just my romantic life, but my life as such, because there was this hole in me. And when I was, I think, around the age of 10 and 11, I decided that I have to kind of, it's not like fill the hole, because the mechanism is like we're trying to fill the hole, but it was more like I need to compensate for this not enoughness. And for me, it was oh, I have to be really impressive and perfect to, you know, to receive that love and attention and appreciation, etc., etc. So what I did as a young woman, and then even in my 30s, I went into like degrees and qualifications, and I did three, I don't know why, I did three master's degrees, and then I topped it up with a postgraduate diploma in psychotherapy, which I absolutely do not regret. It's wonderful. But for me, that was my way of compensating. And also a lot of perfectionism, which was absolutely exhausting. It was exhausting. I remember when I had my I did my psychology degree, and before my exam, it wasn't so much that I was scared of, say, failing the exam, but it felt more like a life and death matter, because it all went back to, you know, the wounds from the past, and trying to make up for those things that were lacking in childhood that I never, you know, developed in myself. So do you want me now to go on and talk more about how it impacted my romantic relationships? Because I think,
before we do that, I think it's really interesting that my partner says this quite frequently, that you know, words can't hurt you, names can't hurt you, and I'm like, what are you on about? They can. For me, I found that the way people have spoken to me, the words that they've used, has been some of the worst experiences, because it's been so cutting, it's personal. And I've been through a lot, but words and the way people talk to you can have such a compounding effect on your self-esteem and self-worth. And as you said, it may not be intentional, that people don't realize what they're saying or doing, but it lasts for such, you carry it for such a long time.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why we experience triggers, right? And so I think it's important to, of course, words carry so much weight, and there's the energy that comes with it. And absolutely. Words and gestures as well, right? Like physical touch, like have you received it in childhood or not? And your parents say, I love you or not? So were there any healthy boundaries? I think all of that is that foundation. And then as adults, we actually have to look at that. There are no shortcuts. Really, there are no shortcuts.
I think we're going to get into this, but when you were talking, it reminded me of the unmet needs of a child, and then how those unmet needs are acted out in our relationships, and how we try to solve them in our relationships, but the only people that can solve them is ourselves.
Yes, it's true. And I think, you know, a healthy relationship can be very healing, because you're receiving what you did not receive. But I think we shouldn't leave it to that person to heal us. I think we really should be able to know what to do with the triggers and understand where they come from, and learn to soothe ourselves so we feel safe, basically.
Got you. So everyone's got a different take on self-esteem, self-worth. What's yours?
I think this is actually what I mentioned earlier, that, you know, self-esteem is actually quite a complex beast because, you know, the foundations for my self-esteem, as I, you know, painted that scene, came from certain interactions. And it's not so much, of course, what my parents did and said and all that, or didn't do or didn't say, but it's also about how we interpret what's happening and how we internalize it. And, you know, the way I internalized what happened was like, I'm not good enough, and I need to work hard for love, and I need to prove myself. And then I took it to my adult life, and, you know, I was trying to prove myself to guys, and my romantic life was drama, a lot of drama for a long time. It was. So maybe what might be helpful to people, I can give examples, because I think
That'd be
talking
great.
intellectually, who remembers that, right? Let's put some flesh on it, right? So, but just to bring it to people's attention, whoever is watching, this is a very specific meaning of self-worth. We're talking about romantic relationships and how they show up. So, so low self-esteem and low self-worth, how do they show up in dating and in relationships? So we have, you know, like the title I told you, look, how do you like the controversial title for this presentation? Why being a high maintenance woman is good and brings a healthy romantic relationship with a man, right? So I think the first reaction from many people could be like, high maintenance is a negative thing, right? But I don't mean a high maintenance in the sense you are an entitled diva, because I've seen comments like that.
Oh, but I am.
Yeah, like, but you know, like I have seen comments like, if he doesn't invite me to the first date with proper, you know, expensive dinner, it's, you know, it means he is just rubbish and he's just not appreciating me. And this is not what we're talking about
Hold
here.
your horses, love.
Yeah, yeah. So, so, you know, when we lower our standards, we have no or very poor boundaries. We just have no idea what this means. We don't know which behaviors are acceptable from a man, which are not. And that is something to be expected if we come from a home where there were very poor boundaries and we have certain like skewed beliefs about love,
don't we? We just continue and act out until we know
what
better.
is totally what is more. And I did an event recently where I explained how it works. In fact, we will be only excited. So I'm speaking to women right now, right? Of course it works the same for men, but if you often have like first dates and you come back home and say, oh, I felt nothing, like it didn't do anything for me, there were no sparks, very often it's a sign that you are actually still attracted to relationships which are toxic, and this toxicity is very familiar. It comes from the past, and we find, like one of my clients said, we find safety in familiarity. And it's an incredible phenomenon that we subconsciously try to replicate what we used to get, right? Totally. In the past. So we really need to like it. I think it's really like learning to walk, you know, because it's going to feel so weird and alien to start to, for example, appreciate a man who doesn't create like the sparks in you, right? It's like, okay, it feels calm, and yeah, he's caring and he sends you messages regularly, and a lot of the time women say, oh, he's clingy, right? He's clingy, or he's boring. So very often women would say he's boring just because he's consistent and he doesn't show up with this toxic behavior where he, you know, withdraws some of his attention. And even though you recognize it as not positive, still it excites you on a subconscious level. So some examples, as we said, practical examples. So when we recognize that, you know, the self-esteem needs working on. So when we completely tune out of our feelings and needs. So I'm on a date, my legs are hurting like hell, but I'm not saying anything, just in case he thinks I'm rejecting him or I don't like him. Right? Classical example of codependence. Or he's asking me, where would you like to meet? Or where would you like to go? Or what would you like to eat? I don't mind. Right? Like my preferences don't matter. Actually, we disappear ourselves. Another thing, which is, I think, quite fascinating to a lot of women, and an answer to why quality men where you enjoy the first date don't follow up, is that we go in with this auditioning energy, right? So we're actually doing exactly what I used to be doing, to fill that hole inside me. Like, I need to perform, I need to show people how clever I am, I need to, and that's completely ego based, right? I need to show how self-reliable I am, how independent I am, right? You don't need to do anything. I don't need anything. You don't need to do anything for me. And we start like organizing the date and pushing things forward. It's so absolutely off-putting to men. And it shows that, you know, we are actually auditioning. We're trying to win him over. So, and we avoiding to be vulnerable. That's another thing. So instead of connecting with myself, with my body, and slowing down, because that's the only way we can tune in, right? So like right now, I'm having an awareness of that, and instantly I'm like leaning back and, you know, taking a breath, because I was in my head, and that's very masculine energy, and I'm thinking. And if it was a date and you were a man, I would be totally in my head right now. So that would be masculine, right? Because I'm using a lot of my logic. When I switch to my feelings and try to tune in, it's, you know, I would be probably even giving different responses. It's being like more laid back and slower in my speech. And I would share with you how I'm feeling probably. And, you know, connect more with your girly, like playful energy. But, you know, when we want to impress, we switch to this, like, okay, how can I impress him? Should I, you know, pull up another joke, tell him about all my degrees, and to mention something about the salary range, or, you know, and it can be very subconscious. But it's again, it's pointing to, you know, the structures within us, where we need to really work on our self-esteem.
It's funny, isn't it? We're not taught how to do the dance of dating. The thought of dating now, I mean, I've been with Steve 23 years, so the thought of dating now, I just think I wouldn't bother. I just think I wouldn't bother. It's way too stressful. I wouldn't know what to do. It's like,
yeah, but it doesn't have to be stressful. I think, you know, it depends how we approach it. It really depends how we approach it. And I think it's about, like with anything else, learning skills, dating skills. I think it's very important. Like, no one teaches us how to do it. How am I supposed to know it, you know? So I think it can be a completely enjoyable journey where you just learn to receive from a man. And I think the difficulty I'm seeing a lot of the time with clients, especially initially, is that they go back to they still have a lot of things to heal. And when we approach men with the, like, you know, like a hedgehog, you know, with lots of needles. What do they have? Needles, the spiky bits. It's like, yeah, and even in the language, you know, like I can share with you a fascinating story. Oh my God, this was absolutely I did a reel on that. The spikiness and how men pick it up even without words. So I asked my client, because she's like, oh, I'm not getting any invitations today. It's like, what's going on? We've been working so long. And what we did, I was like, okay, hang on a minute. Whatever application she was on, Tinder, for example, what are you thinking of these men, like collectively on Tinder? Because we do that, right? Like, people on Facebook are this and that, and, you know, my mailing list is, so we generalize, and then we put all the people in a certain group, we put like labels on them. So I heard her out, and she said, oh, they are flaky, they're lazy, they're not interested, they don't make an effort. So what we did, so that was actually what was happening, right? She was like projecting this. And it really is, you know, if people who are listening have never worked on this level, this is so real. You can check my reel, because she gave me permission to actually take screenshots later on. So what happened was, we worked on that. We really grounded her. And we released all those unhelpful thoughts first into the ground, right? And then I created like this visualization for her where we put all the guys in a bubble, and then she smiled at the guys and she imagined them smiling back at her. And she said some nice words to them. So she worked only energetically, right? Only energetically. I left that with her. I told her, you need to listen to it every day, and she did. And then a few days later, I'm like, whoa, so what's going on? I said, oh my God, I'm getting all these messages from guys and they're inviting me to a date straight away, like straight away. So she said, okay, 5 guys, and then 6 guys. Then, oh my God, it's 7 and 8 guys. It happened within, I'm not kidding you, within 7 days. And she was sending me so many screenshots from the guys. In the end, I said, can I just take those screenshots and like blur out the names and the, identifying details and create a reel? And she agreed. And it was just such a tangible proof, if you like, that something as intangible as our thoughts, which is our energy, right? The way we think, the way we say, we project it on other people. And in this case, it was still a lot of defensiveness and hurt from the past being projected on the guys as a collective. And even until today, this woman is actually getting invites to dates. There's like, she's not stuck on like, no one is, texting me and inviting me to dates. So I thought that story might
it's interesting, isn't it? It's the difference between having the door open and having the door closed.
Oh my God, spot on.
Yeah, when I was still experiencing a lot of trauma, I couldn't let anyone get near me. The door was just completely closed. If anyone looked at me, I'd be like, what are you looking at? I would be like, real chip on my shoulder, like, don't get close to me, don't, and you can just feel it. I can see it in people now. I can feel it in people now.
You can
very much so.
Because probably you are, I don't know if you're an empath or you detect energy, probably, right, as well.
Yeah, it's just the energy thing for me.
Yes, we pick it up. So that would be the first thing really to deal with, rather than, woohoo, let's just learn everything about feminine energy, or like, like dating techniques. We really need to like approach it on a few levels and release the what we are projecting from the trauma, from the disappointments. Really.
And I think what people are thinking most of the time has got no truth in reality. It's just defense. It's just defense mechanism.
Yes,
it's just it's giving you the opposite of what it is that you want to actually achieve.
It is. And I think
more of it.
Yeah. And I think what you said about closed or open door, it's so spot on. What I often say is having closed heart versus open heart. So if there's a lot of that trauma and a lot of those disappointments, and so we know that every time someone says men are this and that, and there's like a negative statement, men are lazy, this immediately, even though this is like a real experience, this will point to where you're at. That means that the heart is closed. And it really needs opening, and you really need to work on releasing completely in the right way, of course.
Absolutely. So what's an exercise that somebody could do to get them into a better state, a better mindset?
I've got something simple. I've got a simple exercise, and I can even give you the context. It worked on me as well so beautifully. All the tools I give you, I've tested on myself. So I think the first thing, because we're talking trauma and we need to release and open the door and open the heart. If someone if you are experiencing a disappointment or a trigger, and there's like lots of feelings, I actually experienced that, right? Even in my relationship, I had to learn how to soothe myself, because sometimes triggers do come up. And in the past, where I didn't have the tools, I would feel, it was like the fear of being abandoned and rejection. it would really feel like, okay, this is like a life and death thing.
Terrible.
And I would go so much into that center energetically, like it would like retract me back to when I was probably a child. And, you know, I would cry and the energy would be so low, and I could spend the whole night crying and wake up totally exhausted the next day. So what is really, really helpful is when you're feeling like this, just look at the body and locate where the feeling is in the body. So for example, you will feel it because feelings are located in the body. Actually, emotions are coded in the body. So, for example, for me, back then it was the heart, right? And then breathing into the heart, if it's the heart, what am I feeling? Okay, it could be anger at first. Okay, honey, what else are you feeling? Anger usually is a superficial feeling. There's usually something deeper. And then for me, it was like, I'm feeling so sad, and breathing into sadness, into this feeling, into the heart, like really breathing into the heart. And staying with that feeling and breathing out. And I stayed with that feeling maybe for 3-4 minutes. I was breathing in and out and in and out. And after a few minutes, literally what I did, I was here in this office. Like I pulled my stuff out of our bedroom, like, okay, experiencing all this trigger. I did this exercise. And then the next thought was, okay, actually, I'm tired of all this. I just want to relax and focus on Netflix and watch a movie. And I did. And that was a huge success for someone who experiences a trigger, because I didn't carry on sinking in those feelings, but I soothed myself. And then I could, you know, have my interest on something else and just relax.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's so easy, but so effective. So I have also the whole process. I don't know if we have time to share a little bit from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll see how much we can share. So I created the 6-step umbrella process. Yeah. So you can see there is an umbrella, right? Because what we're ultimately reaching for is an umbrella perspective. I'll give you a brief outline. Step 1, no limits. You start writing like without any filters. It's very dangerous not to do it when there's something bubbling, when we are unhappy, because we are just pushing it further and further into our energy, and we'll start complaining, we'll start feeling shitty, we'll start feeling lower level depression. I have tested this many times. So not doing it has got serious consequences. That's the first step. No limits, just offload. Step 2, I call Meet Julia. So this is meeting the part of you. So just develop the part in you which is always kind and soothing and loving. And imagine this part. So for me, and this is like imagining as if she was or he was an external person. And it's actually important because sometimes we have so much, like I call it an inner bitch or a critic for a lot of women. It's very severe. So it's better to imagine her as if she was an external creature. So my creature is, for some reason, she's quite young, she's blonde, has got long blonde hair, like maybe like an angelic kind of creature. I call her Julia. So Julia comes to me when, for example, when you're angry, when you're suffering, when you feel something is unfair, when you feeling lack, and she starts to soothe those parts of you which feel those feelings. And it's also good to imagine like these are the parts of me that feel like this, and Julia speaks to those parts, and she always is very kind. So, and she's like the biggest cheerleader. So that's step 2. Step 3, so with Julia, it's also like, not rejecting ourselves, because very often I think we direct anger at ourselves, like, for example, oh, I didn't do well in the event, I'm going to be so harsh on myself, right? You haven't worked hard enough. You should have worked harder. And this is when we start attacking ourselves. So that's why the presence of Julia is something we need to actually practice. I'm still working on my Julia, right? Practicing, connecting with that part. If that part is not developed, we will sink back into, perfectionism, chasing something, having the whole external factors being more important, and we can never feel happy, really. Step 3 is called I'm made of parts, but I'm not all of that. So this is basically acknowledging to yourself that I feel, for example, hopelessness or sadness, I've been dumped or whatever happened. And these are just parts of me. But I'm not, these feelings and thoughts are energy. This is just a part of me, and I'm not all of that. And this is an important psychological trick, because when we are sinking in the trigger, we literally go back to, and we become all of that. And, even imagining like it's just part of me that is sad and feels hopelessness and feels rejected, but I'm not all of that. Then we are realizing, oh, okay, there is a part of me which is not that. There's hope. There's something out there which has got resilience and strength. And then we do the release process. So you speak to the part which you want to release, as if you were doing a ritual. And you say, I see you, I acknowledge you, I love you, I thank you, and I release you. It even feels good saying this, and you release that part. Step 4, you open your umbrella. That means that you need to widen your perspective. So now you've worked on the underlying layers, you've released the pain, and you need to widen your perspective and connect with the resilient, loving, mature part of you. And for example, I had a situation where I felt like, okay, my friend is ignoring me, right? Because she hasn't been in touch and she hasn't responded to my last text message. And this means that I have lost my best friend and people ignore me. This is like literally my thoughts from the situation.
Layer on layer.
Yeah, people ignore me probably because I'm not worthy of having a good friend. I think I'm boring and not interesting. So these were the raw thoughts. Then you have to, in this part, ask yourself, really, it's about questioning our own thoughts and feelings. Like, why is it not the whole truth? So that's the first question. Second, what could be another explanation for this? Third, what arguments would not support this thinking? And 4, which aspects of myself is this situation mirroring back to me? So this is the deeper layer. And here's what I arrived at. So this is my own example. My friend, I feel ignored by my friend, but in reality, it's not my friend ignoring me. I feel ignored by her because there is a part of me which feels lonely and disconnected and ignored. And I have been rushing in the past weeks and being busy with tasks, and I haven't been listening to myself. I haven't been checking in with myself and being with myself, asking myself, how are you feeling, darling? How are you? What do you need? And in that way, I've lost connection with myself. And this means that I have ignored myself. So that disconnect is just reflected in my projections on my friend, that she's ignored me. She's not ignoring me. Actually, I'm ignoring myself. Yeah. But I've projected that on her. And by the way, as I've done that, my friend texted me. So it's that incredible.
The door opened.
The door opened. The process I'm talking about, I have given it to several clients. I cannot give you, there's so many examples I could give you how people, because you're releasing those thorns basically, yeah. Right? Reaching for a higher perspective and changing your energy. Like my client, one of my clients, she completed all the exams she couldn't complete. Her clients started returning back to her because they were like declining sessions with her. And she texted me all of these things after she's done this process a few times. So it's not, it's really, really powerful. And the final step, not the final step 5, is speaking the truth from the umbrella. And here's when we arrive at a different perspective. And here is, we can use the power, I call them power statements. So I'll just give you an example I have arrived at. So for me, I wrote, it is not true that people ignore me because I'm boring. My friend not responding for 2 weeks doesn't mean that everybody ignores me and that I'm boring. In my anxiety, I have ignored all the evidence and all the signs that show how precious and unique I am, how valuable, how loving I am. I'm precious and unique regardless of someone not acknowledging me. I'm precious and unique and worthy of the best friendship and love just because I am. And I think this is an important part, even if someone is not acknowledging me. Right? So that was step 5. Power statement, and step 6 is becoming that, becoming that person who you want to become, right? So the 3 big questions here are, what do I need to let go of to embrace the new perspective and truth? 2, what do I need to do or stop doing to embrace the new perspective? And 3, what's my next step? So these are the practical bits, and this is very, very important. And for me, it was, from now on, I'll go back to cultivating a deep connection with myself. I'll create a sacred morning ritual, light a candle, and just be with me for a few minutes, checking it in with myself and asking myself how I am feeling and what I need in the most loving and tender voice. I'll be journaling, reminding myself of how precious I am, so that I can anchor the points supporting the new perspective. And I will open up to new friendships with an assumption that people will like me and appreciate me, rather than expecting people to reject me or not like me. And that was step 6, the practical steps.
What a beautiful process. What a lovely journey.
Yeah.
Deep, really, really deep.
Yeah.
And I think the way you described Julia, for me, I would call that my higher self, the best version of you.
Yes.
The best version of you, non-judgmental, only wants the best for you.
Yes.
It's like mothering, but not mothering. It's a bit higher than mothering.
Yeah. It is literally like mothering, right? Like a mother speaking to the child, or the higher version. Yeah. You can give it different names, absolutely.
Yeah. How
but I think for some people that's the bitch voice is so strong. Like for me, it was so strong that I had to imagine it as an external person. Or sometimes I say to my clients, what would your friends say to you? Because that criticism can be so severe, you know.
It's horrendous. It's horrendous. And it's, I think, on that journey of healing and recovery, part of that journey is letting go of that internal voice, is being able to do what you said, is to find a way to soothe, to stop it. Because it's just all stuff that's been programmed into you that isn't true, but you're just unfortunately still carrying it.
100%.
How can people get hold of the process it is that you were just talking about?
This process is, I use it with my clients, but I have got tons of examples for people that I share through Love Stories. It's a free newsletter. Literally, it's a series with examples of, basically what we're talking about. What does it actually mean to be high maintenance in a good way, have a high self-esteem, and be recognized as such on many levels through our behaviors, so that we attract a healthy man. So I describe so many examples and speak to power. So if someone is interested in that, I would really recommend the Love Stories newsletter. And we can give people the link for that if they wanted to.
Yeah. We'll pop below the video. We'll pop it below the bio and the video, then people can sign up if they want to get access to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you. That has been really thorough. Thorough is the wrong word. In-depth, deep, thorough. Where do I get thorough from?
Can you see the perfectionist traits in me? Self-disclaimer. I'm still working on it. But thank you. It's been a wonderful. I love those conversations with you. They're just wonderful.
They're always deep. They're always deep. And I love the journey. I love the process. And I love what you were saying about, even though it was a very difficult experience for you, but being able to see that the words from family members when you were younger, the impact that had on your self-esteem, and how that played out in relationships, and trying to get those unmet needs met through other people. But actually the reality is the only people that can do it is ourselves. But coming to that realization is actually quite tricky. It's a tricky thing to get your head around. So it means you've got to take responsibility.
I personally, I needed to get support. Some people can do it by themselves, but taking responsibility and really sticking to it, and every time, and really being mindful of words and what we say, because these words actually reveal those deeper layers that we need to work on. So those projections are really becoming very clear when we pay more attention to our language. So
I have a no stinking thinking policy now. I don't allow myself to think anything bad. Nothing bad about myself or anybody else.
Beautiful. Oh, I love it. So
it's like polar opposite of how I used to be.
No
terrible.
Thinking.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Terrible.
It's work, isn't it? It's really work.
It really is a lot of work. But once you've made that switch, you never go back. I find that I very, very rarely go back. I very rarely slip back into that stinking thinking.
So stinking thinking and the whole, situation. So firstly, I found healthy love, right? Because people, definitely like my audience, will be looking at that. It's totally possible. Does it come back? Yes. The triggers do come back, because I think it's so human and normal that we sometimes have triggers, but they are not severe like they used to be. And when you have the tools, you can soothe yourself and you can bring yourself to a state of safety to start off, and then develop that higher perspective and come back to balance. And really, if we can't do that, we'll be like always stuck in the cycle, and attracting the same people, and
painful.
It's very, very painful. And then the door is closed, right? And when the door is closed, that amazing guy who is there, and he is there for everyone, he can't get through, because it's like, ooh, there's so much wall around the house. One of the mentors I really admire, she calls it the heart calcifies. Over time, right? It's like literally it calcifies, because we build so much armor around it. So it's about opening the heart and being able to trust again, but also learning about practical things like dating skills and boundaries. Like, what does it actually mean, and
do you really
what
want?
do I actually want? What do I actually want?
Why do I want that?
Why do I want that? And you can really have exactly what you want. Marriage, baby, doesn't matter how old you are, you can get married. I even did an experiment. Can we share it?
Yeah, sure.
Do we have time? This is such a funny experiment.
We've got a couple of minutes, and we're going to have to
go. This is a fun experiment, because ladies I work with, women are often worried, marriage, such a big thing. Who would marry me? I'm already 40 or 50. I created actually a fake dating profile where it was light, it was fun, it was true, authentic, but at the same time, I stated in the profile that I wanted to get married. And what happened? I got plenty of messages from guys. I got hundreds of messages, and they wanted to see me, and I did it as an experiment to show to women, really, honestly, claim that dream that you have. It's absolutely possible to have that dream. And I can see that in so many of my clients and my own life. It's totally possible to
It's just that shift in focus, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Shift in focus and taking a risk to experience something different.
Yeah.
That you are enough.
Yeah.
You are enough. And on that note.
Yes. Thank you so much, Wendy. It's been so much fun as usual. Thank you.
Great to speak to you again. Take care.
Thank you so much.